All right, Leon Majcen, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good.
Awesome.
Good to be
Well,
here.
yeah, thanks again for coming into the studio. Really excited to see you perform and play a few songs, but let's start from the beginning and tell me if I get this right. Your dad is Croatian,
Mhm.
right? And your mom's side is Bosnian, and you
Yes,
were
sir.
born in the Czech Republic?
Yeah, I was born in Prague in 1999, and then when I was a year and a half old, we came to the States.
What was that experience like for you, and like how did it shape your upbringing just with that background in general?
I grew up bilingual. That's one thing, but I mean, I had a good childhood. Um, Grew up just like any other kid. Was 15 minutes away from the beach. It was a good life.
So what other language?
Bosnian
Okay, that makes
or
sense, right?
Croatian.
Awesome. Did you always have music like in your background? Did you naturally pick it up one day, or did you always think music was going to be a part of your life and your career?
When I was 9 years old, I woke up one day and asked Santa Claus for a guitar. I just wanted to play. And to be quite honest, I don't know what sparked it.
Yeah.
Nobody in my family is musical. But Santa Claus delivered, and I got a guitar for Christmas that year. And then I never put it down. I just kept playing. When I was 13, I started playing in bars and in coffee shops, and that kind of just turned to what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Did you naturally, like when you were 9, did you pick it up right away, or did it take some time?
It
Like
took some time for sure.
start out with just like the G, D, E
Yeah,
minor,
cowboy
C?
chords. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. You mentioned kind of growing up like on the Gulf Coast in Florida. So, how do you think that really just shaped your music? Because I know you said you performed at some places. I'm assuming like maybe was it like some beachy places? Like, was it,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, there was a Sharkies, there was a Krabbies, pretty much all those beach bars down on Clearwater Beach. I used to play, 3 4 hour long gigs while I was in high school, and I learned every cover that I could really get my hands on. My dad was a big Bob Dylan, Chris Christopherson fan. He liked like the Rolling Stones and that kind of thing. So, I mean, he kind of nudged me in the right direction. I didn't really get into country music until I started playing in bars, and people
Okay,
were
yeah, makes sense.
requesting stuff, and I'm like, oh, what's that? And that's kind of how I fell into it.
Yeah. Would you say like the Florida scene in general down there on the coast, does it lean? I mean, I'm sure there's all types of music down there,
Yeah,
but is there a lot of like folk and country down there? Like, what would people expect? 'Cause I feel like when you say Florida, your mind probably doesn't go toward.
like a songwriter. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, what
No,
was people
yeah.
playing out there?
We had a really good songwriter scene in Tampa Bay. I'd say like a lot of those folks kind of lean towards like the folky side of things. Like there was this guy Joshua Riley who he used to host like an open mic every week at this place called the Whistle Stop,
Yeah.
and every week I would pretty much just prepare 3 songs and go and sing them at the open mic. And Josh was a big John Prine fan, so that kind of nudged me in that direction, and I'm I'm glad I got nudged in that direction. I mean, I had a good community of people to kind of pull from.
So would you say your biggest influences, like growing up when you were like, would you say like John Prine and Chris
Say
Christopherson? Yeah.
John Prine, Bob Dylan, Chris Christopherson, and then I think I found Townes Van Zandt, like
Yeah.
that video of him singing Poncho and Lefty in the kitchen right around the time I was like 15.
Yeah.
And pretty much since that day, my world
Yeah.
changed.
So I know you got some Townes Van Zandt covers like
Oh
on
yeah.
your album. So
I covered that song "I'll Be Here in the Morning" probably 2 times. There's 2 different versions of it on Spotify, but I'm proud of the one that just came out.
yeah, I noticed that because on your earliest album you had that, but also on the latest one
I,
too.
I figured I had to give it a second try. I didn't feel like I did it justice the first time, and I wanted to just do a redo.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about, when I listen to your music, I feel like it almost transports you into like this certain headspace, almost like a peaceful and really like a calming effect. And another artist that does that for me is Jack Johnson. And I'm not necessarily saying that Jack Johnson is folk or country. I'm not saying that
I had a phase when I was younger. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not saying that you sound like him either, but he transports me into that world of like that certain like peace and calming effect that his music has on me. So, and I feel like it's the same way for you. Would you, when you write a song or when someone listens to your music, do you intentionally kind of like want the listener to feel a certain way, or how does that process happen?
I guess when I write, I don't really tend to think about it too much. I kind of just try to get out whatever is in here or in here, however you want to think about it. I never really set out to like write a certain type of music. I just kind of, I guess, fell into it, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I fell into it. There's something to be said about falling in.
Yeah. So when it comes to songwriting in particular, do you draw more from personal experience with your songs? Say, for example, like a thing happened to you and you write about it necessarily. It's a simplified way of putting it. Or do you like kind of like creating your own characters and own stories and kind of imagining those own settings, if I guess you could say? Like, what do you draw more toward?
Well, a lot of it's personal experiences or just how I'm feeling in the moment. Since I've gotten out of Florida too, I feel like I've had a lot more to pull from, and just kind of getting out there. I think I put over 50,000 miles on my truck last year, just touring, and that definitely was good fuel for songs. Pun intended.
I bet you meet a lot of characters out on the road. For sure.
A lot of good people. Yeah. No, it's been a blast. I mean, I love touring. I think touring has inspired me in a lot of ways, mostly just reminding me that there's good people out there everywhere. And, it's honestly just made me want to tour more. You'd think after 50,000 miles, you get burnt out, but I don't know. I'm loving it more and more every time I go back out.
I wanted to ask another question about songwriting in particular. I've heard a lot of songwriters talk about having that one song that might have been a turning point for them, whether that you're super proud of the way you've written it, or you've gotten a lot of great feedback from a particular song or a certain story that you tell. Was there any songs that you're just super proud of that you feel like, hey, like I'm pretty dang good songwriter? If you think about, I mean, I think so, but was there a song like that for you?
I guess like this is a bit of a longer winded story, but when I first moved to Nashville, I noticed that a lot of people were like co-writing, and when you move there, you just kind of write with whoever. Before that, I'd always just written by myself, but then I found a couple people that I clicked with, my buddy Presley, and there's one song that I wrote with him. It's Presley Drake, by the way, for anybody who's interested. He's a killer songwriter and a really good friend of mine. I'm actually wearing a shirt right now. But Presley Drake, we wrote this one song. It's unreleased. It's called If That's What It Takes. That song kind of felt like a turning point for me as a songwriter. I guess I never expected to like co-writing until I did. And there's that song. There's Highway 1 that actually just came out. I wrote that with my good buddy Briggs McElway and Thomas Rowland. And that song's out. I'm happy that it's out. I've been sitting on a lot of this music for months, years. I guess those two kind of felt like a turning point.
I wanted to talk about your third album coming out this April. I wanted to ask, how does this one feel different from your past projects? Did you set out to do anything just different with your songwriting, production, or just the way it sounds? Or is it kind of a continuum of your self-titled?
Well, with this record that's coming out right now, we tracked it up at my buddy John Notar's place in Woodstock, New York. And that was recorded throughout the span of a week. All my albums and projects before that were recorded bit by bit over the course of a few years. And, it's nice to actually, dedicate like a whole week just being like, all right, by the end of this week, whatever we have done, that's the album, And I guess it kind of helps you stick to the narrative of what you're trying to get out there. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, no, like it's easier to convey the emotion of the project, I guess, when it's all done in one sitting, which I never thought I'd get to track an album that way. But I mean, it was fun. We had a blast. John was smoking pork butt the whole week, and we were eating good, having a good time in the studio. We went fishing that week too. That was nice.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. No, upstate New York's beautiful. I always have a good time up there.
I bet. And I think it's super interesting that you said that your self-titled album was done over a series of, like, it was, I guess you were collecting those songs over a few years, right?
Those songs I actually wrote while I was working at Don's Dock in Madeira Beach. So I was up in New York for 2 years. New York City. I regretted that move about 5 days in.
Yeah, let's backtrack real fast because I want to hear about, like, because you graduate high school, right? And then you go
off to college,
New York for college. And how was your, because I would imagine that, New York in the city is a lot different from being along the coast in Florida. So
for sure.
How was that?
It was definitely a culture shock for me. I thought I was going to love it. And 5 days in, I regretted the move. I ended up staying there for 2 years, and I'm happy that I got to experience that. But ultimately, when I came back to Florida, I knew it was time for me to get out of there. But yeah, as soon as I got back, I mean, COVID was kind of the catalyst that got me out of the city. I was trying to figure out a way to get out of there, probably like a year and a half for a year and a half of me being in New York. And when COVID happened, everything got moved remote. I had already committed to taking a semester off to tour, and that kind of, all the shows that I had booked, it was like a DIY tour, but I'd booked a bunch of shows to do like those 6 months, or that semester while I was going to be off school. And that all got canceled. So I ended up just getting a job at the dock, this place called Don's Dock in Madeira Beach, Florida, right on John's Pass, if anybody's familiar with the area. But basically, I spent a year working there. I'd kind of given up on music. Like, that whole time period just kind of felt like purgatory. So, I mean, shows weren't happening. The world was kind of shut down pretty much. And I had kind of given up on music and, like, the way of, like, pursuing it as a career. But then by the end of that year, I had written all the songs off that self-titled record. And when I wrote them, I figured it was time to record them. And then when I recorded them, I figured I might as well put them out. It was kind of the thing that made me realize that I do actually want to do this, as a career. And I'm not really good at anything else. So there's that.
If someone has never heard your music before, what's one song from the upcoming album that you'd want them to start off with, and why?
You're asking all the tough questions.
Deep.
Mm-hmm. I got to think on this one. Well, actually, the next single we got coming out it's called "It Won't Be Long," and that song I actually wrote while I was still in New York, and it had just kind of been sitting in the vault for a few years. But that song, I was gonna put it on the self-titled, and it just didn't feel right for that project, at least. And I feel like John, the producer for this last album, or for this new album, he did that song justice. We had Pat Lyons play some dobro on it, which Pat's the man. I love that guy. But yeah, It Won't Be Long. I just kind of felt like I'd let that song sit for so long and even forgotten about it at times that, you know, I'm happy it's finally getting some daylight on it, you know. It'll be nice to have that song out.
Yeah. I want you to grab that guitar over there because I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask when you think of a song. Do you really start? Do songs just pop in your head naturally, or do you, when you're being creative, do you set out to be like, okay, I'm going to write a song like right now, like I'm going to think in my head. Like, what's the process like?
Rarely happens like that.
So tell me how it goes.
I feel like typically like I'll get a melody. Lyrics are something I always kind of have to fight for, you know, and sometimes it's really productive. Sometimes, you know, you get something that comes to you in 5, 10, 15 minutes and you got the song. And then sometimes you know, you get a verse here and then 6 months later you get a chorus and another verse. And then a year from that, you know, you got a song. But I don't know. I'm always kind of collecting like ideas, I guess. I probably use my voice memo folder on my phone more than anything else. But yeah, like typically like sometimes I'll just pick up my guitar and something kind of comes to me and, you know, I'll shotgun some chords and then, you know, I'll sit with it for a little bit and then, you know, figure out the lyrics, you know, or whatever, you know, sometimes like you mumble around like on a set of chords and certain mumbles, I guess, sound like certain words and then you kind of work off that. But yeah, typically like there's really not much of a process for me. Like it just kind of happens how it happens, I guess. Yeah. There was another song that came out on this record called Gray Hairs on Mama's Head.
Yeah, that's a
good
good
one. Me and Briggs wrote that one together. But we were finishing up Gray Hairs on Mama's Head, and then I just kind of started sidetracking and messing around, and that no 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 kind of came to me. And I was like, Briggs, wait, hold up. We gotta sidetrack. I think I got something. And we ended up writing that song there. And then we ended up redoing the last verse with our good buddy Thomas Rowland. And that's how that song was made. And by the time I went to record up in Woodstock, I knew that was the first song we had to make sure was done and ready to be released.
That's amazing. Looking ahead, though, what's next for you? Because I know right after this, I mean, you're going out on the road. Like, what do you have within the next week? What do you have, like, going on this month? What can fans expect later throughout the year?
I'm going to pretty much just be out on the road all of March. Next stop, I got Missouri. I'm going to drive to Missouri right after this. Yeah. I play on the 6th in Pineville, Missouri, and then playing live from the Divide in Bozeman on the 6th or on the 8th. So pretty much after that show in Missouri, I'm just going to have to start driving. I got a day and a half to get to Bozeman from there. And then I go on tour with Evan Honer starting in Seattle. So after Bozeman, I got to get up to Seattle and start making my way back east. And then I think the last show with Evan is in Omaha. I got 5 shows with him. Then I got a week to kill. And I think I'm going to go to Bozeman, fish for a week. Hopefully it doesn't snow or nothing. But I got to meet Vince and Neil Emerson in Missoula to start that leg of the tour.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it's going to be a long month, but it's going to be a good month.
Yeah, I bet it has to be a blast playing with Evan
Absolutely.
And Vincent and all those guys. So.
Man, I mean, it's kind of wild to me because, you know, a year and a half ago, I couldn't have really seen any of the stuff that's happening now, like, happen. You know, like it just kind of seemed like 2 or 3 worlds away, you know, from where I was at. And, you know, I'm glad I stuck to the music thing. There was a million times that I contemplated quitting music. You know, I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I just stuck to it. And I mean, in the grand scheme of things too, you know, as hard as, you know, trying to do music for a career seemed, as hard as it seemed, it still seemed like the easiest thing for me to do, or the thing, not because it was easy, but because it was what I knew how to do best, you know. And I just, I really couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah. Does it feel crazy just looking back on your journey, like where it's really taken you today? Like I've noticed that you're on homegrown Spotify playlist
Yeah,
now.
that's
Like,
wild to
heck
me
yeah,
too.
let's go. That's big.
Man, I'm just thankful for the team I got and the people that I got around me, and it's definitely a team effort. I used to think that other people just had their shit together
Yeah.
a lot more than I did, and not that I had my shit together by any means, but it's definitely a matter of finding people that you work well with, and that have your back, and just kind of building the community around what you're doing. I think there's something to be said about that.
Yeah. And this is kind of like off topic too, but do you have any other advice like to give kind of like aspiring like musicians? Like, cause I know sometimes it can kind of be like a tough road, like out there, like just trying to get their music like out into the world. Just cause I know on this channel, there is a lot of, like just musicians, up and coming talent that are all amazing. So do
Yeah.
you just have any words for them at all?
Man, honestly, social media, I know it sucks, and my biggest regret is not adopting it a lot sooner than I did. I was kind of stubborn in a sense that, like, TikTok came around and people were telling me like, "Hey, you got to get on this," and I was like, "Nope," and
I feel
now,
the same way. Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, it's
like,
tough
oh,
to
man.
see where something's gonna lead to, but
Yeah.
if you get on like these platforms early, as soon as like the wave's coming, it's just a matter of seeing opportunities when most people don't see them, and I think that's definitely something that I wish I adopted a little earlier,
So for people that are just now discovering your music, what's one thing that you'd want them to know about you as an artist?
I aim to have a good time.
Pursuit of good times. Yeah, Marsh
Absolutely.
Wear.
Always in pursuit of good times.
Speaking of Marsh Wear, tell me what you got on today.
I got a shacket on.
Yeah.
I think the olive green, and this heritage hat.
And what's crazy is that I had the same exact shirt or the jacket on as Leon this morning, but I had an intuition
That he was
that
gonna
he was
wear
going to wear it. So I had this other sweatshirt. So I was like, man, for some
Man.
reason I know it's going to happen. So I put on the other
I
sweatshirt.
kind of wish we wore the same thing. I think that would have.
Should we have done the
really
same thing?
done it
Maybe, yeah.
Vote in the poll below.
Okay, to end the conversation, here's a fun one. If you could only listen to 3 albums for the rest of your life, you knew this one was coming.
You're asking tough questions.
Oh yeah, who would they be? And it can be like 2, 60s or 7, like in the past, or it could be one modern one, or within the, you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
it could really be anything. So who would they be?
3 albums. All right. First one, Honky Tonk Heroes, Waylon Jennings, Billy Joe Shaver. Second one, Eagle Rock Fire by Joe Purdy. Third record, and a lot of you might not see this coming, but Continuum, John Mayer. That record is probably, definitely one of my favorites of all time.
We got some John Mayer fans in the studio for sure, behind the
Absolutely,
cameras. But yeah, well, Leon, thanks for
Man,
just
thanks for having
coming
me,
out.
brother.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man.
And yeah, we can't wait to hear you play. So let's get into it.
Sounds good.
Let's do it.
Thanks for having me.
All right.